Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about, well, whether Pluto is an astrological planet or not. Now, as many of you may know, in September of 2006, Pluto was officially declassified from a planet, and it now has the dwarf planet status. Now, the question is, well, as far as what how science perceives this, and astronomers look at this or what have you, they see this as a dwarf planet. But should astrologers see it that way? Well, I don't believe so. I think the answer is a resound as far as whether Pluto should be seen or interpreted as an astrological planet. I believe the answer is a resounding yes. Now, I mean, I think when you look at it, okay, Pluto, the reason it was declassified was because its mass, as far as its mass, was minuscule relative to the other bodies in its orbit. So anyway, but that doesn't mean that astrologers have to perceive this as something other than a planet. Its impact can be very powerful. Now, let's talk about, I'm going to talk about some examples as far as, well, as far as its impact. Now, let's talk about first transits. Now, many of you may know that in Merle Haggard, country music legend Merle Haggard, when he died, transiting Pluto made an applying conjunction to his ascendant. Sadly, Pluto is associated with death. I know a lot of you don't want to hear me talk about the dreaded D word. It sounds very morbid or morose, but I'm just using this as an example. And also, many of you may remember another renowned singer, David Bowie. When he passed away, transiting Pluto was making a fairly close applying conjunction to his natal Sun and Mars, both associated with vitality, and that could signify the vitality being destroyed or obliterated, where Saturn often restricts, and Pluto can sometimes completely destroy and obliterate. Now, and also another example is in a progressed chart. Now, prolific, he was very prolific in terms of science. Carl Sagan, he had that series Cosmos. I believe it was very a popular series, and of course he had debunked astrology, but the thing about it is his own chart, I think, gives validity to astrology, and also as far as Pluto goes. Now, Pluto conjoined his ascendant in his progressed chart when he passed away, and legendary boxer Muhammad Ali, when he passed away, Pluto was making an inconjunct to his ascendant, and Pluto was close to his 6th house cusp at that time. And that, of course, is health. So 6th house governs health in astrology. So, and some other things to look at too. As far as in a natal chart, I mean, you could see how Pluto can have a significant impact on someone. Now, Pluto in my chart, use my chart as an example, my Pluto is in my 5th house, and it's intercepted. Now, I'm 46 years old, no children. I have 3 planets in the zodiac sign Cancer, and Cancer is that sign of life-giving. Now, Pluto's impact can be stronger than a lot of people believe. I have, as I stated before, I have Pluto in my 5th house intercepted. Pluto can often obliterate. Now, no children, 46 years old. There's other factors in my chart which I think which really reinforces this, though, as far as not having the kids. Now, I also have my 5th house cusp is in Leo, a barren sign. My intercepted sign in the 5th house is Virgo, which is also barren. I also have the black moon Lilith in Leo, and it is conjunct my 5th house from the 4th house. So I think you have all that factored in, but I think Pluto definitely has something to do with it. And a former friend of mine had saw that in my chart, that I had Pluto in the 5th house, and she felt that was the reason I did not have any children. Now, I'm not saying that everybody that has Pluto in the 5th won't have children, by all means, no, but I think it's one of the factors, along with other elements in my chart, that for that reason of not having children. Now, also, it's important, you could look at other things connected with Pluto too. Now, as far as I think when someone prominent in my life, she had Pluto when it transited her, say, it was her 4th house of home and family. It created a lot of upheaval in her domestic life. She had a number of moves during that period when Pluto was transiting her 4th house of home, and this is a time I think people need to be wary when Pluto transits a 4th house, your 4th house, that not just about upheavals in the home, but keep in mind, as I stated before, that Pluto can often obliterate and destroy completely. And this could be from something horrific, such as a tornado or something like that, in some isolated cases. Now, thing too is, Pluto can often, be strong in terms of synastry aspects. My grandparents, God rest their souls, they had their Pluto made a conjunction to my 3rd house cusp in my natal chart, and I felt like they were very controlling over things that I had said a lot. They had a strong impact perhaps on my communication as well, and maybe to this day have that kind of maybe I think it might have impacted the way I speak a lot and the way I communicate, perhaps even to this day. Now, Pluto, as far as transiting or traversing signs, may only on average perhaps about 20 years per sign. So you look at its impact more by by the house that it's in, of course, and not the sign. But just because it may take 20 years on average to go through a zodiac sign, its impact can be very immense and very powerful, to say the least. Now, another reason we could say Pluto, I think, should be still classified as a planet, at least from an astrological perspective. I mean, even as far as the sign that it transits in terms of its global impact. Now, Pluto had entered Scorpio in 1983, I believe, and stayed there till like the mid-1990s, and you had such an outbreak of this HIV and AIDS cases. You had such a strong proliferation of the HIV infection during this time. But on the positive side, I think people were becoming more cognizant of the sexually transmitted diseases, and especially the HIV/AIDS. So those were things to consider as far as that transit went, and I think that also helps corroborate how strong and powerful that Pluto can actually be. I really think it's nearly preposterous that it was declassified to a dwarf planet. I understand from the scientific perspective, though, because of its mass being as minuscule as it is. Another thing too, what I think is interesting is when you look at Pluto. Okay, Pluto is one of the rulers of Scorpio, and Pluto, I don't know if they have the irrefutable evidence right now, but I know at least people are strongly suspicious, scientists are strongly suspicious at the very least, that there is some water underneath that surface of Pluto. And when you look at Scorpio, the sign Scorpio, I think there's a strong correlation to the sign and that of the planet Pluto, and that those possible waters being beneath the surface, because Scorpio can often show a very placid and cool facade or front, so to speak. Their exterior can be very controlled, but beneath it you can have these turbulent, raging waters which are just ready to explode. And I think Scorpio has that in them. They have such an emotional energy below the surface, that watery energy, but they don't always show it superficially. So I think there is still that correlation with Pluto and in Scorpio for that reason. So, and one last thing I thought was interesting too is that when Pluto, shortly after Pluto was discovered in 1930, at least in relative time, at least within, it could have been a few years, I don't know exactly when, but the speculation process as far as the atomic bomb was in order people were starting to think about ways to create the atomic bomb. Now, the second one was dropped August 9th, 1945, and I think what's interesting, and I've said this in previous videos, that the black moon Lilith entered Scorpio on that day, and Scorpio is of course not just ruled by Mars but by Pluto as well, and Pluto is of course associated with nuclear weapons, and that second bomb had a strong proponent in it called plutonium. So I thought that was very interesting that Black Moon Lilith went into Scorpio on that same day as that second atomic bomb was dropped on August 9th, 1945. And it's hard for me to really fathom or think that that was purely coincidental. So, and in short, in summation, I do see Pluto as an actual planet at the very least in astrology because of its powerful impact. I mean, you have Chiron, which has a pretty strong impact on the natal chart, whether it's transit or natal position. And I think if you look at that as strong as that could be, and that's not even considered anywhere near a planet, I think Pluto should be considered a planet because of its powerful influence and impact. And I think it could almost seem like at times that other astrological energy may dwarf in comparison to Pluto at times. So anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for answering the question whether Pluto should be considered an astrological planet or not. And stay tuned next time where I'll be continuing my series on the zodiac signs and money. Two things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel but do not compel. And secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis of a person astrologically speaking based on this alone, because astrologically speaking, the person is the sum of all their components in their natal chart and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.